Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Basel Pod. I'm Sam Basel, joined alongside today Michael DeRosa. DeRosa, how you doing? How's this college basketball season treating you so far this February?
Well, I just watched Butler last night lose a game to Providence in which Providence played a walk-on for 22 minutes. So I think that answers the question.
Yeah, that'll do it. But we're talking about some more fun stuff on this podcast. We are bringing back a segment that I really had a lot of fun doing with you last year, the NCAA tournament tiers. It's kind of a little bit of an extended bubble watch. It's kind of bracketology without all the seeding. The main focus here is taking a look at a lot of the teams that are currently in this year's at-large field for the 2026 NCAA tournament and seeing just have they done enough to get in, or do they need a little bit more work as we move into February and beyond? But first, I wanted to take some time to talk about a really crucial matchup on the Big East calendar starting on Friday. We're recording this on Thursday, but by the time you listen to this pod, it'll be Friday, and that is St. John's versus UConn at Madison Square Garden. Obviously one of the biggest matchups in the Big East. It's only been further ignited by the fact that UConn came back to the conference in 2021. And since then, UConn rejoined the conference in 2020, but their first matchup since rejoining was in 2021. Since rejoining the conference, UConn has had a stranglehold over this matchup, going 6-3 and 4-1 in Madison Square Garden, which UConn fans have decided to call Stores South. So, Michael, for you, what has kind of been the, biggest character trait of this matchup over the last couple of years between the Huskies and the Red Storm?
Yeah, honestly, it kind of has been Store South. Like UConn fans have packed that place out. That's kind of been the main thing for me. And last year we saw like the first time we've seen good St. John's in this entire matchup, right? And I mean, they were very good last year. And I think St. John's swept them, if I remember correctly. I think St. John's won both matchups last year. So UConn's going to be looking for a win. I mean, UConn, since joining the Big East back, has won 2 national titles. So they've won a lot of games, believe it or not. And I think they have a decent shot to win this one as well. I kind of think they do get it.
Yeah. So St. John's coming into this one on an 8-game win streak. UConn on an 18-game win streak. The Huskies only lost this season coming to number 1 Arizona, 71-67. And that one, I believe, was in Stores, right? I remember that game.
Stores. Harris Reed did not play.
Yeah.
And I don't think Braylon Mullins did either.
Yeah. So for you, I mean, obviously 2 top teams in the conference. This is going to be huge for seeding. It's going to be huge for, either of these teams' at-large resumes. Going into this game, I mean, what do you feel like is going to be the defining characteristic of this game? Obviously, St. John's with the number 1 offense in the conference, UConn with the number 1 defense in the conference, a top 5 defense nationwide. What do you feel like fans should expect to see in terms of play style in this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of mentioned it. It's best offense versus best defense in the league. With St. John's offense, they're firing on all cylinders at this point. Particularly, they don't turn the ball over. They don't have a true point guard, which I think could come to burn them because I think UConn's going to really try to control the game, and I think UConn will be able to control the game and play the game at UConn's pace, which is much slower. So long as UConn, for all the things they're awesome at, one thing they really struggle with is they turn the ball over a ton. And St. John's is going to press them all game. So if St. John's can really speed them up, make UConn rush, get them out of some of their really intricate actions, and just make that UConn offense kind of a slog, which it kind of has been of really in conference play. It just felt much more like a slog than it has in even recent memory. Just do whatever they can to just kind of muck it up there. And St. John's, when they have the ball, they don't turn the ball over. They're a very good three-point shooting team, but they're not really a good interior offense just because they don't really get the ball to ton. When they do, he's obviously scoring. But, if there's one guy in the league that can match up with Zuby, it is Terrace Reed. So I think that makes this matchup very tough. One thing, again, UConn's defense is national lead, as you mentioned, 5th in the country. One thing they really struggle with, and Dan Hurley is still apoplectic at this fact that he has been for 3 years, they foul a ton.
Yeah.
And Dan Hurley still doesn't believe that they foul. Every single time a whistle is called against them, he thinks the world's on fire. They foul a ton. And I think that's really the one way St. John's going to be able to take advantage of them. St. John's plays aggressively. They get to the line. Particularly Zuby is just a foul magnet. If you can get Terrace Reed in foul trouble, Zuby on Eric Ryba, that's just kind of a mismatch in St. John's favor. If they can't, and it's Zuby on Reed, I think Reed can kind of handle his own. I mean, Zuby's going to get his because he's just an awesome player, but I think he can handle his. And St. John's is just going to have to find ways to hit the outside shot. They don't take a ton of them. They really try to play inside and draw a ton of fouls. But if they're not drawing defense inside, like UConn's defense is just elite. And if you don't have a true point guard, you're not going to be able to control the game. So the game's going to be at UConn's pace. And I think UConn will play well when they can control everything.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Zuby, and you also mentioned, I thought this was interesting, St. John's kind of lack of a point guard. We've seen it all throughout this year. I mean, they move the ball a lot through Zuby Ejiofor. Yeah. Talking about them playing without a point guard, I feel like that just kind of, harkens back to what I've kind of seen with St. John's over these past 3 years, and what I kind of think of as these kind of like Pitino quirks and how he's built this roster. I think it's it's built from multiple things. It's just the way the transfer portal works now. Mm-hmm. Where Coach Pitino is in terms of his career. I feel like a lot of people are kind of under the assumption that this is probably his last stop, in his very long coaching tenure. And he has kind of really doubled down on that by showing that he is just, I don't want to say haphazardly, but he's taking a very interesting approach to how he's constructed his teams, right? He doesn't really focus on high school recruiting since he's been at St. John's. He's working almost entirely out of the portal. So do you feel like, the lack of a point guard is kind of a symptom of that? And do you feel like it could kind of hurt St. John's, down the stretch, maybe in the tournament here?
Second question first. Yes, I definitely do believe it could hurt them in the tournament because a lot of March games are won with guards. Guards are what win you March Madness games. Not every time, but Florida last year, we watched Walter Clayton, who was a former Rick Pitino player. I mean, they should have lost a handful of games in the tournament that they just didn't because Walter Clayton just decided he wanted to play. They lose that game to Texas Tech 9 times out of 10, in my mind, just based on the last 3-ish minutes and how it went. Walter Clayton just took over and just decided, I'm not losing this game. And he did that to win a national title because he was a special player. Yeah. But guards win games in March. And when things aren't going your way, you're against a team that's of similar caliber to you. They have the similar kind of athletes. Point guard's going to control the game. And last year, that was part of the reason they ended up losing was because Kaderi was in foul trouble. And they didn't have another guy who could really step in, lead the way, versus Arkansas had, a handful of really good guards who are playing in the pros now. That was just kind of what won them. And then Arkansas matched St. John's length, physicality, the way no Big East team had. We're going to see them tested for the first time. Seton Hall kind of tested St. John's in that way, but we'll see it in terms of just this next matchup and just how UConn, because UConn has similar length. Silas Demery at point is long. They got length at every position. We'll see if they're able to answer that. But yeah, I do think it'll hurt them in March. Do I think it is a symptom of the larger Pitino just using the portal and not having a point guard? No. There are going to be 30 really good point guards in the portal in
Absolutely.
a month and a half. You can find one. They had Kaderi last year. They had Kaderi and Davon Smith, 2 top 12, roughly-ish point guards in the portal last year. There are guards in the portal. You will have him. He just chose not to get one because he thought he could turn Ian Jackson into a point guard when he couldn't. He couldn't.
And like you said, I feel like the big thing that guards, a good NCAA tournament guard controls in a game that St. John's might be missing is the pace, right? St. John's plays, they play very physical. Obviously, the ball moves through Zuby a lot. They're a top 10 offensive rebounding team. That's great. Crashing the glass is a very exciting way to play basketball, but it's not really sustainable for 40 minutes, especially 40 minutes when you're playing a game, every other day in a month period, right? Even every day 3 days in a row like they're going to be at Madison Square Garden. So it's like, to be able to slow down, speed up a game as needed, it's going to be really important. And St. John's might be missing that.
Yeah, I mean, you hope you can get good matchups, right? Like, if they get good matchups, this team could absolutely make some noise in the tournament. Just find a team that either just doesn't have good rebounding or it turns the ball over a ton. Like, it just doesn't have the physicality of them. Like, if they played St. Mary's, I don't know how good St. Mary's is this year. I don't think they'll be in the same realm, but, like, that's a team they would match up very well with. Just because St. Mary's doesn't have the athleticism. Like, St. John's can just beeline to the rim and they'd probably be fine. Would obviously want to look into the matchup a little more if it ends up happening, but like just that kind of archetype of team, right? But
yeah,
I think having a good point guard really kind of makes you almost matchup agnostic. I mean, matchups still matter, but like it makes you more matchup agnostic than you are if you don't have one. If you don't have one and the other team doesn't turn the ball over against St. John's and like they have a true point who will not turn the ball over, it's going to be a tough game no matter what. Even if it's like a 13 seed, if that team isn't turning the ball over, they have a true point guard who can control the pace of the game, get it up, slow it down, and they're a team that can hit a ton of threes and they get lucky that day, it could happen. But on the other hand, if it's a team that turns the ball over a lot and then St. John's next matchup is a team that cannot rebound, they're going to look pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we talked about Zuby, we talked about guys like Terrace Reed. Specifically in this matchup, who's a player that you feel like outside of, all their either team statistical leaders that could really benefit and have a good performance in this matchup? Like a guy that you feel like just matches up really well against St. John's for UConn, or a guy that matches up really well against UConn for St. John's. That's kind of under the radar.
UConn, I mean, I don't know if he's necessarily under the radar, but I just kind of look at the guards of UConn. I think they can have a decent game, being Demery, Solo Ball, and even Braylon Mullins to an extent, just because I think St. John's defensive strength really is their bigs. St. John's on the perimeter is lazy in rotation. It's the worst part of their defense. They rotate really slow. Teams in Big East players shooting 37.2% from three against them. Like, the three-point defense is probably their main weakness. And you can catch them in rotation. Teams don't get a lot of threes up against them, but if you do, you're generally getting pretty good looks. That's really kind of like the main defensive flaw to me. Like, you can get 10-toe wide open looks, and UConn's going to diagram that up. And I guess if I'm targeting a guy, it would probably be Solo Ball, just because, I mean, Ian Jackson can really get stuck. Dylan Darling is not a great defender. Isaiah Sellers is a fine defender. He's pretty good. But I think Solo Ball and Braylon Mullins will have good looks from the perimeter, and they're going to have to get him. On the St. John's side, I think it gets a little tougher. Honestly, I like the way they've been using Dylan Mitchell lately. He's kind of been used as like, he's not like a point guard, but he's like a de facto point guard in like the half court offense, and that they run a lot through him. They run a lot of high lows with Zuby and him, or Dylan Mitchell's just getting good looks to the rim. He's playing a lot better lately. He still can't make a free throw, but really he does everything else in the game of basketball but hit any sort of jump shot.
Yeah.
But I think he's terrific. I think he could be a tough matchup because he is much faster than Karaban, and that's a way in which you can take advantage of UConn is at that position, just because Karaban's not the quickest. You can take advantage of his feet on the perimeter and then just drive past him. And if Terrace Reed isn't there for help, you can get buckets in that way. Teams are able to take advantage of Karaban. If it's just a straight post up, I think Karaban will be fine. But in terms of like spacing and driving it, I think that is where St. John's could have an advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. And, bring up St. John's 3-point defense. According to KenPom, if we isolate it just to conference stats, they are the 8th team in the conference out of 11 in terms of 3-point defense. So that's pretty tough. KenPom, speaking of KenPom, they've got this game as a 1-point victory for UConn. Do you agree with that assessment, or do you feel like the Johnnies could surprise people?
I mean, I don't think it would be much of a surprise if St. John's won. Like, I think it's a pretty 50-50 game.
It'd be their 9th win in a row. Like, they're hot right now.
Yeah, like they're not sneaking past anyone. But I do tend to think UConn wins this game. I think UConn matches up fairly well. And, I mean, look, I'm not going to be stunned, but it also is a factor that UConn fans are going to pack MSG. Like, that it is a factor. Like, how much of a home court advantage is there necessarily? I don't know if it'll necessarily feel like a UConn home game per se, but like UConn fans will be there. Mm-hmm. Like, it will not be a complete St. John's home game, which I think makes a difference. And I think UConn's defense is really going to be able to stifle St. John's. St. John's won't turn the ball over, but I think UConn could kind of have them out of sorts, where I think UConn will be able to get some good looks. I really think St. John's is going to need to win this game at the free throw line. Otherwise, I think UConn's going to really kind of dice them on the perimeter. And just all those screens and stuff they run, I think they're going to get good looks against St. John's.
Yeah, absolutely. So that'll be the first of 2 regular season meetings between UConn and St. John's. That game tips off Friday, the day that you're probably listening to this pod, at 8 p.m. It's going to be at Madison Square Garden. If you can't be there in person, you'll be able to watch it on Fox. So that's going to be a really fun matchup. And make sure you follow Road to the Garden for, updates on that game and many more around the Big East. But now let's get into our main attraction of tonight, and that is the 2026 NCAA tournament tiers. Another quick breakdown on how this works. I like to call it casual bracketology because we're not taking a look at, whether or not Michigan's going to be a 1 or a 2 seed, or, whether somebody's on the first 4 out, the next 4 in. This is really just bare bones. Do we think they have the resume to be an at-large team, or do we think they have a lot more work to do? So because of that, we've broken that down into 5 tiers that, I like to call them. First, the locks, the teams that as of right now, we feel that they will have their name called on Selection Sunday, no matter what. Then we've got fairly comfy teams that, are pretty much there. We just need to see a little bit more out of them. Teams that are on the bubble. This is a term you've heard from every single bracketologist around. These are teams that, could make it, but just need a little bit of a push depending on some of the automatic bids. Long shots, teams that definitely need a lot more work to do. And then I created a new tier for this year, stealable bids. So these are schools where I think, I just want to put into question, these are potential 1-bid leagues, but these are schools where I feel like if they don't win their conference, do they have enough to be that conference's only at-large bid? And probably are the only schools in that conference capable of securing an at-large bid. I want to start off with locks. Considering it's February, we've got a lot. I've got 26 in here. And the reason why is because of a stat that I kind of, teased to you today, Michael. And that was just looking at some research from both KenPom and the NCAA net rankings. So I took a look at, for the last 5 years of both those ranking systems, how things looked on February 1st. So February 1st from 2021 all the way to 2025. And I looked at the top 25 teams in each of those rankings. Since 2021, if you are a team that is in either the KenPom top 25 or the net top 25, you are probably going to make the tournament. Only 6 teams in that metric, either that have either gotten both or just one of those top 25s, have missed the tournament. Do you feel like you can guess some of those teams that might have missed the tournament?
So read the stat to me back one more time.
Yeah, so
time and think.
On February 1st of your respective year, from 2021 to 2025, if you were either in the KenPom top 25 and or the net top 2020, the net top 25, you have probably made the tournament. 6 teams have missed that.
Are we counting teams that did self-imposed tournament bans? Is there anyone on there who did that? That was my first thought.
No.
Okay.
No, there are no self-imposed
February
tournament
1st, if you were in the top 25 and missed the tournament, how did you fall off that bad? I'm going to assume, okay, would Seton Hall be on there from the 24 season, the season they almost made it and missed it?
No.
St. Louis, that same year?
No.
Okay, that is the year I'm targeting. So if there is no one in that year, we're kind of screwed. That was my first.
So there are 2 teams in 2024 that missed it.
See, those are the first 2.
One was a mid-major that people are kind of considering one of the biggest.
Indiana State.
Okay. Were you
I
saying
said
St.
Louis because it's the same group there. I meant Indiana State. Yeah.
All right, so that was one of the 2024 teams. I'll give you the rest of them.
Yeah.
2021 Boise State, 2022 Xavier, 2023 Rutgers, 2024 Oklahoma, and 2024 Indiana State, and 2025 Ohio State. interesting thing about Indiana State. So I looked at, where they were on February 1st, and I looked at what they did afterwards. All those schools, except for Indiana State, went on to have a losing stretch heading into Selection Sunday. All of them were either, 4-6, 3-7, 5-8. Except for Indiana State, they went from February 1st all the way to Selection Sunday, including their loss to Drake in the conference championship game of the MVC. They went 9-3, which to me kind of further amplifies how much of a snub they were that year. But I just thought that was very interesting. So
I should have got the Xavier one. I remember those Travis Steele teams. They were the same team every year. They would be good until February, and then they would lose 8 straight.
Yeah, so Xavier was 2022. Xavier was 15-5 on February 1st, 2022. From that point on to Selection Sunday, they went 3-8.
Yeah, I should have got that one.
Yeah. So all that to say, the 26 teams that I'm showing you here are either they're in one of those two metrics, top 25, or a lot of them are in both. I feel like I want to give most of them the benefit of the doubt. There's one team that I feel like I am a little bit tentative to put in the locks tier, but first I kind of wanted to get your thoughts.
Okay, there are a couple I would be tentative on putting in the locks tier. Number 1, NC State. They lost to a bad Georgia Tech team. They've been playing much better lately, but Will Wade said something I actually want to see if he played last game. I believe he did, but I want to double check this. Will Wade, in one of his recent press conferences, of course, on KenPom, you can't type NC State. You have to type North Carolina State.
Or N.C.State.
Yeah, it's even more annoying. Yeah, awesome. All right, I found him. In one of his more recent press conferences, he said something to the extent of Darian Williams has been playing with this busted calf lately. And he played last game. He played 34 minutes, and he had 25 points. So he was fine, obviously. But that was just something that caught my eye. And if he goes down, they're not good. They came back to beat SMU. Yeah, SMU was up big. And of course, SMU found a way to lose because that's what SMU does in Q1 games. But they're 8-2 in the league. I don't know. I just don't fully trust them. They could lose that home game to UNC. They could lose to Virginia, lose to Duke. They don't have a ton of quality win up. They do have quality win opportunities, but if they lose those, it could be a little greasy. And on the bracket matrix, they're the worst 8 seed. I think that calling them a lock is a little premature. And the other one, which does bother me a bit to say it, but I do think we would have to take them off, is Iowa. I love Bennett Sturts. I just don't really see a world in which they miss the tournament, but I think I need them to go. I think if they win their next 2, which would be Northwestern at home, Maryland on the road, I think if they do that, then I'd be comfortable moving them up because you would avoid 2 bad losses. And then at this point, a loss to Purdue is not going to hurt you. A loss to Nebraska is not going to hurt you. At Wisconsin, it's not really going to hurt. Home to Ohio State, maybe. At Penn State, definitely would. And then your last 2 games of the year at Michigan, at Nebraska, that's not going to hurt you at all. I would wait until next week to put them in a lock. I don't think they're there yet. I think if they have another bad loss, again, they're another team that's on the 8 line. If they have another bad loss, you're in kind of greasy territory. Because they don't have a huge win. Their best win is at Indiana, second at Washington, who's not going to sniff the tournament. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, their worst loss right now is Minnesota. How much do you feel like that kind of?
It's on the road. I think that's a fringe Q1 game. You're fine. But if they have a bad loss, they lose one of their next 2, then it's greasy territory. You have one bad loss and you have one good win. That's a push, and that's not great.
Totally. All right. So I'm totally comfortable moving NC State and Iowa. Fairly comfy tier.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? So the one team that I was tentative about putting in locks, not because I don't think they're a lock, but I just, knowing how, sometimes mid-majors can be treated by the selection committee, it's St. Louis, right? Yeah. St. Louis is a fantastic team this year coming out of the Atlantic 10. Again, talking about the Indiana State snub, it's a lot of familiar faces. Josh Schertz, Robbie Avila from that Indiana State team obviously are now on St. Louis. It's their second year with the program. They have 1 loss so far this year, and that's to Stanford, a neutral site, 78-77 loss.
In the dumbest game ever. Do you remember how they lost that game?
It's been a while, to be honest.
I had a St. Louis ticket in that game. I still cannot believe they lost. They were up like 15 for most of that game. Like Stanford's pretty good, right? Like I don't think they're a tournament team, but like they're pretty good. Ibuka Okori is a player. Stanford finds a way to make a comeback, play very well, and then that is the game where St. Louis fouls. Stanford goes to the line. It fouls up 3. Stanford goes to the line, shoots the first, makes it, shoots the second, misses it, bounces back to the corner to this white guy who hadn't made a shot all fucking game. Money. They lose by 1 at the buzzer.
Hey, that's a tournament level loss, right?
Never going to forget that game. That was miserable.
Yeah. So my tentativeness to put them in the locks category is just kind of the A10 this year being a little bit of a landmine for them. Obviously, the rest of the conference is there's kind of a little bit of a gap between St. Louis and then the next best team, which is VCU, George Mason, which we'll get into. So I was kind of seeing if they'd be a better fit in stealable bids. Where they're the team where if they don't win the A10 tournament, they can come in as just that conference's single at-large bid. But if you feel like they've done enough to kind of lock in their spot in the tournament, please disagree with me.
I would only disagree, saying, I don't think the thing is, I don't think they lose to LaSalle, Loyola Chicago, Duquesne, Loyola Chicago again. I just don't see a world in which that happens.
No.
It's basketball, anything can happen, right? But
totally.
But
a sub 300 Loyola Chicago, it's not happening.
They're not beating. If they do, more power to them. That game's a week from tomorrow, the first Loyola Chicago game. But even then, if they lose at Rhode Island, home to VCU, at George Mason, at Dayton, are they in? Probably not. So I guess I'd put them in fairly comfy. That's I think what I would do, but it's not one I was gonna really fight you on. I see both sides to it.
Yeah.
And
all right, let's leave them in fairly comfy for now. I think it could be a lock. I think they just need to get through if they can handle if they can win all their games going into March and still be undefeated in conference play by March 1st, I think they're an absolute lock. But right now, they're looking very
good. If they get past Dayton, if they just don't lose, if they win one of Dayton or VCU, of which I fully expect them to, I think they're fine. They're not losing at home to Loyola Chicago. That's not happening.
Absolutely. And that VCU team, that's a good win for St. Louis. That VCU team. And even Mason, I've seen both those teams in person this year. I've obviously watched all of these teams, but I feel like in person sometimes it's a little bit of a different look. Sure. They're both fantastic teams. All right, so in summary, leaving most of these guys here, we're moving NC State, Iowa, and St. Louis into fairly comfy, and we'll leave them there for now. In the fairly comfy tier, are there any teams that you feel like? I know you kind of alluded to SMU being a little shaky here, but are there any teams that are currently in the fairly comfy tier that you feel like should move out? Any teams in the bubble category or lower that you feel like have a good shot at moving in?
Yeah, Indiana has beaten one team with a pulse. Actually, they beat UCLA on the road. They've beaten 2 teams with a pulse. Move them down. They could find a way to bungle this. I don't think they do, but move them down. I don't trust them. I think Georgia that's just a team that just don't pass my eye test. I just don't think they're very good. So we're bumping them down too. SMU is another team I just don't trust in these big games. And these are all teams that are on the 8-9 line. Most of these teams are on the 9-10 line in the bracket matrix. I think if you're on the 9-10 line, I'm not calling you fairly comfy yet. You got a lot of work to do. What? Indiana loses to Oregon Monday, February 9th. So 4 days from now, if they lose to Oregon, they're probably out of the tournament, out of bubble range. So I'd bump them out of bubble. Georgia, I feel like Georgia actually has some decent wins. I want to check that now. Let's see. Yeah, they beat Arkansas at home, Auburn at home. That's probably 2 Q1s. Lost to Clemson on a neutral. Yeah, no, I would bump Georgia down as well. Like I just the SEC is a gauntlet, and
Bubble.
go ahead.
Down to the bubble, you're saying?
Yeah,
Wow.
like the SEC is a gauntlet, and for the rest of the way, KenPom has them projected to win 4 games and lose 5. Like 4 and 5 down the road, you probably are still fine, but like if that Oklahoma game goes the other way and all the others remain as projected, then you're 3 and 6 coming down the stretch. Kind of lines with teams we've seen fall out. Like I could see it happen. I think if they get one, I mean, if they beat Florida, they're probably in the tournament. So, but they've lost their last 3. Not on a great run as of late. Texas beat them by 20. Texas A&M beat them by 15 in their play at Georgia. Maybe the wheels are falling off. Maybe they're not, but I do not trust this team at all. I think they're mid. So I don't think they're in the tournament. They're a lock by any means. They're the worst 9 seed on the bracket matrix. You got work to do.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Indiana, Georgia, down to the bubble. SMU.
I kind of think SMU's fine. Let's look at this because they're another team I just don't trust. Like that's kind of it. But like they beat North Carolina, they beat Texas A&M on a neutral. That win is aging very well. That A&M team can play.
Mm-hmm.
In the ACC, they should be fine. Like, I mean, they shouldn't lose to Pittsburgh, Notre Dame, or Syracuse in their next 3. If they lose one of those, we'll bump them down to the bubble. But for now, they're projected to win every game they have left but one. At Cal's 53%, they could lose that one. But I would keep them there just because the ACC sucks. But I'm not going to lie. I don't think they're good enough to make the tournament. They're a team I'd pick against in the first round no matter what. So,
yeah. All right, cool. So Indiana, Georgia, down to the bubble. Now going to the teams that we've already got in the bubble. The big one that I kind of caught my eye when I was making this graphic is Santa Clara, right? For me, it kind of feels like, and let me know if you disagree, but don't you feel like a lot of these WCC teams are just, they've got a calendar circled for when the day that Gonzaga is officially out of the WCC, so they can kind of get a little bit more room here in terms of the at-large conversation?
Oh yeah, definitely. But on the other hand, if they beat Gonzaga, like that completely changes their tournament projections, right? Like,
I mean, a Gonzaga team that just lost to Portland.
Yeah, like you beat Gonzaga, like it completely changes everything. The one thing for Santa Clara that's killing them is they lost to a team we've mentioned multiple times on this show already, Loyola Chicago. You can't lose to Loyola Chicago. And that KenPom has that listed as semi-home and it listed on neutral on the team sheet. But they have some decent wins at Xavier. It's not nothing. Beat Nevada at home. Minnesota on a neutral. Again, not nothing. Their metrics are pretty good. They beat St. Mary's at home. That's also not nothing. But the Loyola Chicago loss is killing them right now. That Loyola Chicago team just keeps getting worse by the day. But their metrics are good. They've got some talent. They've got a G League kid who still cannot score the ball. He's their worst offensive player on the team, despite him playing in the G League last year, which really all this stuff that we haven't mentioned, it should be an indictment on NBA scouts that let James Najee get drafted. That guy sucks. He can't play on Baylor. And we let him get drafted 36? What planet are we on? This Thierry Darlin kid, he can't score on Santa Clara. He's their worst offensive player by a mile. He's the only guy on their roster with a sub 110 offensive rating. He is a 95.9. He's a net negative offensive player is what that means. He's a net negative on the offensive end. He can't play. He plays less than 50% of their minutes. He can't play.
Yeah.
And this guy was in the G League? Come off of it, man. Like, these scouts fucking blow. We need to, we have a lot of work to do with NBA scouting, but Santa Clara, they have to beat one of Gonzaga or St. Mary's the rest of the way. Like, they have to, in my mind. Otherwise, they're not making the tournament.
Wait, sorry. What'd you say Najee's minutes percentage was again?
I was talking about Darlin. Darlin
is Darlin.
46%. Najee might be. I mean, let's see what Najee's done lately. Let's run this through. Why not?
Well, that's the other thing too. I mean, if I could offer, maybe a silver lining for some of the people that were pretty angry about, this move and what it means for college basketball, for a guy to come in and then only play 46%, might be proof that this experiment is not really the cheat code.
Then they'll find a G League kid that can, like Bediako can actually play. He's actually really good. Just these kids suck. It's just on the fact that they're not good. Like James Najee played 11 minutes last game against Colorado in a blowout. He played 1 minute against West Virginia in a close game, 7 minutes against Cincinnati. He was a DNP CD, I'm hoping, against TCU. He played 2 minutes against Texas Tech. Like, he can't play. He played 16 minutes against Kansas and didn't get a single shot up. He took one shot and he made it against Colorado. Since that game, he didn't take a shot against West Virginia, Cincinnati, TCU, Texas Tech, Kansas, or Oklahoma State. So the last time he'd taken a shot before then was Houston, January 10th. He took a shot. He takes a shot every 3 weeks. He can't play. Like, it's just, whatever. 3 of 7 from the free throw line. Yeah, that guy was a pro. Hopefully the NCAA bans this so we don't have to see these guys playing who NBA scouts should not get. They shouldn't be able to like just have a bad contract they sign get waived because they're dumb.
Yeah. So in conclusion, anybody else that you're trying to move out of the bubble?
I think I'd move Utah State to the bubble.
From fairly comfy to the bubble.
Yeah, that's another one. I was just looking at it now. Again, it's just another situation of there are so many games they can lose that could kill them. And I don't think they're a surefire tournament team yet just because like some of their big wins, VC won a neutral that probably ends up Q1. But Boise on the road, Q1. New Mexico on the road, they just whooped Q1. But just if they lose some of these games coming up recently, like Wyoming, Fresno State, Memphis, those are not going to age well. So I would wait until after February 14th to put them in fairly comfy because Memphis they have talent. They could still beat you and they could still ruin someone's season.
Totally.
I don't think they beat Utah State. I think Utah State is substantially better coached and has more talent and better talent just in the sense of like working together. But I could see them just getting beat, unfortunately. And I want Utah State to be a lock in the tournament. They're fun to watch, but I think we got to wait.
Cool. All right, let's move into the long shots tier. 2 Atlantic 10 schools.
There's a team you don't have. I don't see them. Where's Cal?
I don't have Cal on here.
Yeah, I think Cal's I think like Cal is on the bracket matrix. They are the last team in the tournament. I think they're very much on the bubble. Like straight bubble. Like I think they're ahead of Santa Clara. I think at this point, I don't know where USC is.
USC I have in the bubble.
Yeah, USC's in. Yeah. USC is pretty good. Yeah, like I think they're on that New Mexico, Miami sort of tier. I think they're behind those teams, but I think they're on that tier. And I think they're like, I think they should be on the bubble at least. I think if the season ended today, I think they're a true coin flip to make the tournament. I think that puts them on the bubble.
Cool. All right, so Cal on the bubble, Utah State down, Indiana into the bubble, Georgia into the bubble. Yeah, that's some good stuff. Cal did lose to Virginia Tech.
Yeah, Virginia Tech's another team that is like fringe. Like we have on the bubble. Losing to a bubble team is not going to kill you.
If you're a bubble, it's keeps you on the bubble. All right, let's get into long shots. The two teams that, well, actually, I want to start off with Seton Hall because I do feel like Seton Hall could make a move up. I know you're a Big East guy. So what are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I think they've been pretty bad since Big East play began. If we just look back, they got pretty lucky that Providence just finds ways to lose games just because it's kind of what they do. And Seton Hall was controlling that game for most of it. Then Providence came back and Providence found a way to blow it. They got kind of schooled by Villanova. They got pretty fortunate to beat Marquette on the road. They got very fortunate to beat Creighton at home. Georgetown was up 10-15 on them. And then they lost 4 straight games after that. They whooped Xavier. Good win. Then again, like Marquette game it was never a true toss-up, really, but like maybe midway through, but like that was close as well. Like they're flirting with fire a lot. So I would put them in the long shot just because, I think they'd have to beat one of Connecticut or St. John's to really get their way back in because like other than that, at Creighton, okay, that'll be a fringe Q1, maybe Q2 game. Providence at home, that'll end up being Q2, Q3. Butler on the road, that'll probably be Q2 because Butler stinks. DePaul at home, that's Q3. They stink. Georgetown at home, maybe if you're lucky that gets to Q2, but like you don't have a ton of resume building opportunities. The resume, like the good part of it for the most part has been built unless they find a way to beat St. John's or Connecticut. I kind of think they need that to make the tournament. So, and I don't think they win either of those games. So I would keep them as a long shot.
Yeah, absolutely. Creighton, Providence, Butler, their next 3 games. I know you just alluded to them. Any losses there that's just a dagger, just a dagger to their.
I wouldn't say so. Like, I still think they can afford it. If you end up getting the UConn and St. John's game, then I think you have some wiggle room. But like, if you lose to Butler on the road, or if you lose to Creighton on the road, it's like, okay, like,
tough environment.
If they lose that game and Creighton just ends up winning a couple more, that'll end up being Q1, and a Q1 loss isn't going to kill you, but you want to win that game.
Yeah.
Their margin for error is very thin. That's why they're in a long shot. I think that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, the other 2 teams I wanted to talk about here, VCU and George Mason. Mason, you actually had to kind of convince me to put them on the graphic going into the show. I also was thinking about, they were on my mind, but that loss to Duquesne last night really kind of sunk it for me. And then VCU,
but it's my show. I wanted to talk about George Mason. That was it. That's what I did.
All right, well, let's talk about George Mason. What do you like about them that convinced me to get them on the graphic here?
3 losses, man. They can play. Like, totally. They're a good team. Like, if they go on the road and beat GW, a team they've had historic success against, I think they've won their last 5 meetings against GW. That could end up being a Q1 win. That's going to age well. And to end the season, they go at VCU, St. Louis at home. Let's say they win, and granted, they've struggled on the road against some teams worse than them. Like, they could have lost that St. Bonaventure game. Loyola Chicago, I think they beat fairly comfortably. You were at the Fordham game, so you could tell me more about how that went. But, Rhode Island, they kind of got schooled. I watched the end of that game. They kind of got schooled. They couldn't stop Rhode Island. And I actually didn't see any of the Duquesne game. But at home, that's a bad loss. It would just be straight up. I think they would have to win out and then win 2 of the 3 at GW, at VCU, home to St. Louis, and not take another bad loss, even in the conference tournament. I think they're a long shot, but I wanted to talk about George Mason because I think they're good. So they're here.
Yeah, they're a fun team. And, when I did see them, obviously, like you said, it was against Fordham. Same for VCU. A compliment for both of those teams is that Fordham, for years, even, it's their first season under Coach Mike Magpaio, but, I mean, I've seen it under multiple Fordham head coaches in multiple different iterations of this program. Fordham is a team that takes you to Rose Hill and they drag you through the mud, right? They turn games, even teams that like to shoot the 3, that can, effectively shoot the 3 very well and run up the score, right? They turn them into slogs. They're like 60 to 57 games, a lot of very physical, a lot of fouls. This one, obviously, George Mason came out on top 67 to 58. They looked good. VCU looked good as well. The one thing about VCU that I, was a possible red flag for them was they went into the half up 13 against Fordham, right? They only ended up winning by 4. The tide really shifted. The crowd got really intense. Rose Hill's, one of those gyms that can get really loud, just, the way it's built. They never lost the lead, but they let it get kind of scary against the team that they should have kind of taken down a little handily, that they were up by 13 against at one point. So that's kind of tough. And VCU has already lost to George Mason earlier this season. So kind of Mason has the cards in that regard. So, yeah, 2 long shots. I think 2 very good teams. I think we should definitely be looking out for them come the A10 tournament.
The problem with just both of them is they just don't have quality wins. Just the best win for VCU I have in front of me is either on a neutral against South Florida, who, I think wins the American, but it could, I don't know. And then on a neutral against Virginia Tech, who's a bubble team, but they've already lost. The problem is they've lost on a neutral to Utah State that would have aged well. At NC State, they could have beat them. Vanderbilt's actually terrific. But they don't have any bad losses, which is good. George Mason has the bad loss yesterday, as you mentioned. VCU doesn't, but VCU also doesn't have quality wins, and they don't have the same opportunities that Mason does because they already lost to St. Louis at home, and they already lost to Mason on the road. So for the rest of the way, they're going to have to beat Mason. Mason comes to their place. They're going to have to go at Dayton and win. And I don't think it's a must win, but man, that St. Louis game Friday, February 20th would completely change VCU season. And that you got to go on the road at St. Louis, a team that hasn't lost. Their only loss is on a fluky 3-point play after a tip rebound if they're up 15 in the game.
Yeah, I mean, if I can quote DJ Khaled when we're talking about the lack of quality non-conference wins, I mean, they're kind of suffering from success, right? I mean, it's kind of tough in college basketball today to be a mid-major team that's just a little too good to be a bye game.
Which is my least favorite part of college basketball.
It sucks. It absolutely sucks. Like,
play good teams. Don't be a bitch. Play good teams.
Play and especially, both these teams not too far from each other. I mean, decent drive from each other, but they're both in the state of Virginia. They both, Mason and Fairfax, VCU and Richmond. They got teams, they got teams that we're looking at right now in the locks category in their own state. Virginia's right there. Virginia Tech is, right there. So many good schools that they could be scheduling on a regular basis that could really, help everybody. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? It's like risk assessment. And if you're just scheduling cupcakes in the non-con, you're not really, like once you get to conference play, you can actually, get some good wins because you have to play those teams. But, I would like to see less high major schedule padding.
Yeah, Mason only had the game against Virginia Tech, and they ended up losing in Virginia Tech's place. But VCU, at least they were able to play teams. Like they played Utah State on a neutral. They ended up losing that game. They went at NC State, competitive, but ended up losing. South Florida, decent win. Virginia Tech, decent win in their MTE. The loss was to Vanderbilt, who at the time I didn't think was as good as they are, which clearly was wrong. And then New Mexico came to their place, and New Mexico still beat them. VCU at least had opportunities where they just weren't able to take advantage, unfortunately. And I think they're much better now than they were then. I really do. This team I think they're pretty good. Lack of a rim protector would be my one concern with VCU, but this is not a VCU podcast. But yeah, they need big wins. What they're missing.
Absolutely. It's funny. It's funny talking about the scheduling issue because, I'm sure we can go through our mutuals, our college basketball mutuals, get any one of them on a pod and ask them about that, and they'd agree with us, right? So many people feel this way, but it almost feels pointless. It almost feels like shouting into the void because all these schools that hold the power, they don't want to change that, but it's unfortunate. Let's get into our final tier, the big school that obviously
real quick, I would move San Diego State up to the bubble.
Okay.
I think they're on the bubble on the outside today, but let's say they beat that game February 25th. If they beat Utah State, if we look back at their resume, the Troy loss is going to hurt them, but I mean, and the Baylor loss, honestly, Baylor sucks, but beat Boise State, beat Nevada at Nevada, that'll be Q1. New Mexico, I don't think it'll end up getting Q1, but that's another Q2 win. If you get Utah State at your place, that'll be Q1. And then if they can get one of those New Mexico or Boise State games, that's another Q1 win. That'll be another quality win they can add to their resume. I think they're on the bubble outside at this point just because they have a couple decent wins, but you also have a bad loss versus but I think it'll be enough to get them on the bubble. I still think they're in consideration.
All right, let's do it. Let's move them up to the
and bubble. I also have a 300-1 San Diego State national title bet. So,
so a little bit of a bias bubble move now.
Correct. But, I mean, they're the second team out on the bracket matrix. They're ahead of Santa Clara, ahead of Seton Hall, Missouri. My God, imagine if Missouri makes the tournament.
I didn't even have them on this graphic. I wasn't thinking about them.
I'm not even gonna fight that one. That team plays zero defense.
All right, so stealable bids. Like I said at the beginning, these are mid-major programs that are kind of exceeding the rest of their conference. If they win their conference, it's a one-bid league, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
My question for you is, should any of these teams not win their conference's automatic bid? Are any of these four teams right now good enough to make it as an at-large school?
I'd say Miami, Ohio is the one. Yeah. I mean, they haven't lost yet. Imagine the season ending and let's say, I feel like they lose at some point. I mean, they've played some really greasy games, but they just won them. At Marshall's not going to be easy. That's a pretty good Marshall team, but Rest of the way, that game they have a 61% chance of winning. The next lowest is Ohio, 69%, March 6th. Like, let's say they win out, or even let's say they lose the Marshall game and they win the rest of them. They'll have 2 losses on the season, including a conference tournament, which they would lose. I don't know how you keep a 2-loss team out, especially because they beat Akron. Like, that's a legitimate win. At Wright State isn't nothing. It's not going to be a great win, but it's not nothing. And I don't know how you keep a 2-loss team out of the tournament. That would suck.
Yeah.
I just don't want to live a world in which that would happen. So I would say Miami, Ohio. Yale, I would say just definitely not. If they lose, that's a 1-bid league. Tulsa's the interesting one to me. Let's look at Tulsa's resume. Like, I think they're very good. Yeah, I think Coach Conkel's done a very good job there. At Kansas State, they lost. At home to South Florida, like I don't know. I kind of think South Florida ends up winning that league. I think South Florida's better. But even that, like, I think that's a toss-up. South Florida beat them at home. Yeah, they play South Florida this weekend, actually. If they go to South Florida and win, and then they win out, and then they lose in, like, the conference tournament to South Florida, let's say, by example, I think they can find a way in. Like, they'll have a decent win there. Wichita State won't be nothing. South Florida win should end up being Q1. I think I think they should stay on this graphic. I don't think they'd be like, if we were to take them out of the stealable bids category and put them somewhere else, I think long shots would be fair, maybe bubble, but like I think long shots would be like fair. Like,
yeah,
I think they pretty much, you have to beat South Florida and then they'd be like a decent bubble team in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing for me that I was just looking at with Miami of Ohio specifically is like the numbers, the ranking systems just do not like them. You know,
like,
when I was making this, they were 90th in KenPom.
Yeah, but like, imagine a team loses 2 games and they still don't make the tournament. Like, granted, am I going to pick Miami, Ohio in the tournament? Honestly, I don't fully think so. I think that defense is legit pretty bad. Like, every time I've watched them play, teams can score on them. And like that, I don't fully trust them on that end. They're going to score. They shoot the hell out of the ball. But yeah, I don't really trust them in that department. So I don't expect to pick them, but I can't imagine leaving a 2-loss team out of the tournament. That would suck.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've only won, you know, again, they're undefeated. Like, you know, I say all of this with you know, with that in mind. But 4 out of their last 5 games have been within single digits. You know what I mean? They only lost. They only won by 2 against UMass at home. You know,
every one of their games is greasy.
Yeah, which is awesome. They're a fantastic team to watch, but you know,
I still have no clue how they won the first Buffalo game. I have no clue how it happened. Like, they just did.
Yeah. Some teams just have that magic with them, you know, and this year it just happens to be Miami of Ohio. So I think that's going to wrap it up. I think we've got a pretty good idea of some of the motion that you'll see. Obviously, for those who are watching on YouTube, this was the work in progress tourney tiers, and now that DeRosa has given his input, now we have our fully set one. So you can make sure you check that out. That'll get posted on the House Enterprise socials as well as my own socials, Sports by Basel. So we'll move into next week. Going into this weekend, what are some crucial? I know I think there's like a big football game on. I don't know if you're aware. I've just mainly watched.
Never heard of it. I don't even know what football is.
I think it's like a pear shape. Anyway, there's going to be some crucial, you know, bubble worthy college basketball games going on. Anything on your mind? I know we talked about St. John's UConn at the beginning. That's not a bubble worthy game, but it's a great game to watch. Any big games that you feel like you know, are worth people keeping their eye on this weekend?
For bubble or for like general?
Both, either. Okay. Whatever floats your boat.
Run it off the top for just general. Illinois Michigan State is going to be a terrific game. Houston at BYU. I mean, it's the potential. I mean, I don't think he is, but it's the potential number 1 pick versus Houston, a team that's dominated college basketball for the last few years. So that's going to be a great game. Alabama Auburn, good rivalry. It's fun. Texas A&M's actually been pretty good this year. They get Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky. Those games are always fun. Rivalry. Duke, UNC. It's obvious. Like, those are obviously the best games. for bubble purposes, Cal's got to win against Clemson. Like that would help their resume tremendously. They're going to play in some pretty like greasy games. Like when Cal travels, like they travel to BC and Syracuse, like you're traveling completely across the country. Like I don't know how that affects them. Like they've lost some of these away games, like at Virginia Tech, it's a team they're probably better than, but like they lost at Florida State, that's a team they're definitely better than. But like sometimes the cross country travel can get them. Clemson's got to come to your place. You got to take advantage. You got to win that game. That's one Cal needs to have. I mean, I shouldn't say like need, but like they need to have it. Let's see what else in terms of bubble watch. Washington goes at UCLA. I was actually going to like on the sheet. I was going to be like, is Washington really like a long shot? Like, do we really think they have a chance? Then I looked at their KenPom and it's okay. If they win this UCLA game, the rest of their games, they're all projected to win them. Like pretty big if they're able to. I mean, winning out is a stretch, but like if they're able to, like that'll at least make that conversation pretty interesting. And they're projected to win all of them but UCLA. So if you can somehow win this one, then we're really talking. And UCLA is a team where Mick Cronin every day kind of changes his opinion on that team. So we'll see if he believes they're good enough. And then NC State and Virginia Tech could another be a decent bubble game. You never know.
Yeah, fantastic. I got two for you. Specifically in the A10, we got VCU taking on Dayton tomorrow. That'll be really important. And then George Mason taking on St. Joe's on Saturday. St. Joe's obviously kind of out of the picture, but that is a landmine game in the Atlantic 10. St. Joe's gotten a couple sneaky wins in the conference so far, so that will be very interesting to see. But I think that wraps it up for Bubble Watch this week and our tourney tiers. You can find the fully updated tourney tiers on the House Enterprise socials that you see ticking below. And DeRosa, for your thoughts on Butler, your thoughts on the Big East, and just general stream of consciousness, where can people find you?
Yeah, at MD the Dream on the Twitter sphere. Yeah, that would be the spot. I just whatever comes to mind. Really, it's mostly just like I'm watching a Butler game, and it's just like, oh my God, how is Kim English playing Nilavon Daniels, their walk-on 12 minutes or 10 minutes and a half, and their future NBA player only 12? It's just like, what planet are we on? That's where I'm posting stuff like that. Road to the Garden, of course, podcast, websiting, whatever. House Enterprise, it's the best content in the world aside from nowhere because we're the best.
Exactly. All right. And where else you can find the best content in the world, you'll be able to find on our blog some coverage of that football game that I think is happening this weekend. There might have been some pods breaking down some team matchups, so definitely go check that out. But until then, for Michael DeRosa, I'm Sam Basel. This has been the Basel Pod, and we'll see you guys next time.